Hey everyone, it is Tea Time with the Diva. Grab your tea, grab your coffee, because we're going to get into it. This tea time is dedicated to Diddy's defense team, Diddy, in this whole trial. Listen, there have been talks about kicking juror number 6 off the jury, okay? And not pushing in, but ushering in one of the alternatives. And there are 6 alternative jurors who have, alongside with pretty much, been listening to the case along with the other 12 jurors. Just in case something happened to one of the 12, they have 6 people they can choose from to replace whoever, has to leave or is getting dismissed. Well, the defense is fighting back. The prosecution wants juror number 6 gone, and defense is fighting back. And they have several reasons that they wrote to the judge on a Sunday night. This judge is getting no rest. I mean, you would think on Friday when the judge said, okay, court is adjourned, we'll see you on Monday, that he would be able to rest on Saturday and Sunday. Well, no, because every weekend thus far, there has been some type of letter that went to the judge over the weekend. So let me share a screen. We're going to get into some things. So Diddy trial. If you dismiss that black juror, I want a mistrial. So Diddy's accusing the prosecutors in the case of trying to get rid of a black juror, and he says he wants a mistrial if the judge goes through with the dismissal. Now, a mistrial, I mean, I guess he's probably used to being in jail at this point, or unless if there is a mistrial, he plans to ask for bail. Listen, I at first I was like, yeah, they had no reason not to give him bail, but now I changed my mind on this situation. Not pretty much that they had a reason, but I think bail, not getting bail, saved his life. I honestly believe if Diddy was out on bail and had to just come from his home, hotel room, or wherever to show up for court every day, I really feel like he would have been high as a kite. Because when they arrested him at the hotel, there was evidence at the hotel that he was still indulging. I'll put it like that. The rapper's legal team filed a letter to Judge Ron Sunday evening claiming that while the court might believe the prosecution's questions about a juror's inconsistent answers during voir dire are sincere, the government is just finding pretense to dismiss a juror because of their race. Diddy's team says by putting the dismissal attempt into the context of overarching proceedings, it's easy to see that they're trying to take advantage of an opportunity to strike yet another black male from the jury. The jurors' inconsistent answers about their residency during their voir dire, Diddy team says, doesn't necessarily mean they're not fit to serve on a jury. And they cite Judge Aron's own words from Friday when he said the subject matter of what was being addressed is so far afield from the jurors' performance. So they're saying that the judge said himself that, this is not a big deal, but then is backtracking and changing his mind and thinking about dismissing juror number 6. Let's take a look. That's the judge right there leaving. I feel for judges. Their job is not easy by any means. However, Diddy team adds the judge changed his mind by the afternoon, signaling his intent to dismiss the juror without further inquiry. And Diddy side feels there's no justification for it. By dismissing a juror of color, Diddy argues that people of color will be less likely to serve on a jury in the future. They're saying Diddy's saying this, but really it's the legal team. Diddy's side also lays out a series of alleged abuses by the government during the investigation into him, claiming law enforcement used excessive force during the raids on his properties, and investigators steadily leaked false and prejudicial information to the public, which, I agree on that. They did. His demand is clear. Diddy says that if the court insists on dismissing this one particular juror, then he believes he deserves a mistrial. This is the third time Diddy has asked for a mistrial in this case, and many of the arguments here were made by his attorney Xavier Donaldson in the court on Friday. According to multiple reports, 4 of the jurors are white, 8 are not. The Daily Mail reports 5 of the jurors are Black at the time, but it's not 5 of the I don't believe it's 5 of the 12 main jurors. I think they're counting also this part of the 6 alternate. That's my belief. But I can't say that for sure. At the time, the judge said he would consider the defense arguments over the weekend, though he did not indicate he was likely to dismiss the juror. Though he did indicate he was likely to dismiss the juror. Excuse me, I misspoke there. So let me add something else here. So I'm going to just go through part of the actual letter that they submitted last night to the judge, okay? So this Megan, she's in the courtroom every day. Sean Diddy Combs' lawyers tonight filed their vigorous opposition to the removal of a juror who is one of 2 Black men on the jury. This was discussed several times last week, apparently regarding residency and what jurors said and why there versus a recent comment. So they're saying that it's this back and forth about where is he actually living. So one day the juror number 6 came to court and, made mention of the commute and made mention of he commuted from New Jersey. And then when they questioned the juror and they based it on the questions that he was first asked about where he lived before he even was seated on the jury, they're saying it's inconsistent, the prosecution, and they want him out because they're saying if he can't be consistent and tell the truth about where he lives, what else did he lie about? Or what else will he do to kind of, maybe hang the jury or just, throw this thing off course. So this is a letter. It's a long letter, but I'm not going to go through all of it, but I just want to make out some key points here. The defense submits this letter in further support of his vigorous opposition to striking juror number 6, a Black man. Mr. Combs will be subsequently prejudiced by the dismissal of this juror, and because there is no factual basis to remove him under Fazio, the court lacks discretion to do so. Moreover, if the supposed inconsistencies in his answers to the court questions were truly of concern, they blacked out that. I wonder what that was. If the court strikes juror, we respectfully request a mistrial to be declared. We understand that the court has refused to find any discriminatory motive in the government actions with respect to his peremptory strikes or this motion. However, we respectfully and regrettably disagree. The government motions must be evaluated in light of the entire history of this investigation and prosecution and not in isolation. So in this letter, they name what they feel the defense is an egregious things that they have done from the onset of the investigation, including the raids of Diddy's home. And they want the judge to consider all of that to say they was biased from the beginning. They continue to be biased. So enough is enough, right? And then where am I at? Unfortunately, we considered against that background, it is impossible to believe that this motion is merely a good faith attempt to raise a valid question about the juror's integrity, rather than their effort to take advantage of an opportunity to strike yet another Black male from the jury. Okay, so first they tell him there is no valid basis to dismiss this juror because they're saying that, and they quote, statutes of other cases that happened before where that was not allowed and it's not fair. So they're saying apply that case because that's what they do in law. You got to bring in some case law to prove your points. And so they put the case there. They said, so see generally the United States versus Fazio 770. Here, this is where there would be significant bias and prejudice to the defendant, and there's no factual support for dismissing the juror. So they quote that case right there. So let me see, because they put so much good stuff in this letter. They didn't just write, don't dismiss him just because he's Black. They named some other stuff, right? Let me see. Second, there is no factual support for the government's position or respectfully the court's statements Friday afternoon, which were in stark conflict with the court's apparent recognition Friday morning that the purported inconsistencies were likely completely benign. So they're saying that the judge himself said that, the inconsistencies with his address, at the time, yes, he probably was living in New York. at the time, maybe, it wasn't clear what they mean by who was your family, because they said, who is your family? He said, my girlfriend and my daughter, right? But then later on, he said he was living with the aunt, so forth and so on. So they're saying that he answered the questions to the best of his ability at the time. And just because he answered this way at that time and this way at this time doesn't mean that he's a stone cold liar, right? This is a good letter. You need to go to her Instagram page and read the whole thing in its entirety. I'm not going to do that. I won't bore y'all with that. So they say on the record, there's an insufficient basis to make this determination about whether or not he's being truthful or not truthful and should still stay on the jury. Now, what I want to get to, all of this is good stuff here. And they're also saying that we could talk to him more and perhaps reconcile the inconsistencies versus just kicking him off the jury. Now, okay, let me see where I want to get to with y'all. And then here's where they're saying, if you want to exclude this juror, then it's going to be a problem. So you know what? We want a mistrial. Exclude, then give us a mistrial. So then they go back to all the things they felt were egregious that the prosecution has done to date. And part of it was the jury selection. The government motions continues a pattern of overreach, suggesting a discriminatory motive in a challenging juror. Although the court denied our Batson challenge and said it found no bias to suggest the government had a discriminatory motive when it sought to strike juror number 6, we believe that motive is supported not only by its remarkable decision to use seven of his 9 peremptory strikes on Black jurors, but also by the history of the investigation and prosecution, which has been characterized by extreme government overreach from the beginning. So during jury selection, they got 9 times they could just strike somebody and say they don't want a juror, and they don't have to give a whole bunch of reason. But they said 7 of the government's 9 strikes were used on Black people. They said some of those Black people, and it's in this letter, y'all could go here and read it. They said 7 of those Black people, like say, I was going to be on the jury, and then I say, well, yeah, I had a cousin that, did time because of DV, or I have a boyfriend who previously spent 9 years in prison for doing XYZ. Strike, they didn't want me, right? And they said they did that 7 times, and they're saying it's not fair because they're saying that Black and brown people on an overwhelming, amount get sentenced for crimes more than their counterparts, so to speak, or other people that don't look like them. So when you want a jury of your peers and you're asking Black people to come and serve on a jury, they're saying that 9 times out of 10, they might know somebody who's been to jail, went to jail, or had some type of run-in with the law. So if you want to strike them from serving, then they're never going to be able to serve. That's what their point was here. Let me go here. Oh, oops, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to do this. Okay, so that was that about the jury. Okay, so then here they also talked about the history of the investigation and prosecution. It's interesting. They say that the way they was able to get the warrants to go raid his homes were all based on lies. They based it on some of these witnesses that they mentioned in their opening statement, and later on, now these witnesses are not even appearing. So you got warrants to raid his home and using people that you're not even bringing forth as witnesses in this case. They also talk about the excessive use of force. They talk about how the prosecution alerted the media that they was going to do these raids because they wanted it to be filmed and they wanted more of a circus. They talk about in this letter how they was leaking into the judge put a gag order, all salacious stuff about Diddy so that people can be prejudiced against him before his trial even came up. They could feel a certain way about Diddy, so he wouldn't even be able to get a fair pool of jurors. They talked about how what did they talk about? How they released the all this salacious stuff about baby oil, this, that, and the other. Which when you think of RICO, you're thinking not baby oil, you're thinking weapons, audios of threats, And they also talk about how it was leaked. There was minors, there was this, there was that. And nowhere in their case did they present such things. So they're saying that the prosecution from the onset has been doing some egregious stuff and not getting away with this. And this is pretty, they said pretty much with juror number 6, this is the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. They're like, enough is enough, right? They talked about how Cassie Ventura, she said all this stuff happened to her, but she never went to the police. Okay. They talk about the amount of resources the government has spent on this case that is about relationships gone bad. And I heard that is in the millions. It's a high double-digit number that they have spent so far. They said how the defense, the prosecution has refused to kind of work with the defense in this whole situation. They said every time they ask for information, the prosecution would not give it to them. They bring back up, they hear that bullet right there says that Southern District of New York used misrepresentation and material omissions in warrant applications. They said that when they went to do these raids, the people they used in the applications they knew were lying, but they used those people to get the warrants anyway. Again, here, investigators used excessive force and created a media circus during the raids of Combs' home. They said the boys were in the house at the time. They were complying with orders, and they had a laser pow pointed to Justin Combs' chest, and they said they had a pow at the head of Christian Combs' head. So this was just crazy. They said investigators leaked a study drumbeat of false and prejudicial information to the press, and to the court issued a broad gag order opposed by the government. So the government did not want the judge to put this gag order out. It's just crazy stuff here. You got to read this. This is just, it's really interesting. And whether you like Diddy or not, it's just not right. Prosecutors insisted on detaining Combs even though he did not present a risk of flight or danger. They talk about how they knew Combs had came to New York to turn himself in. But again, they made that a media circus because they didn't want him. They knew they didn't want to give him bail. So as if he would have turned himself in, they couldn't say that he was such a danger or flight risk, because who's a flight risk and they turned themselves in. So this is crazy. And they said prosecutors also violated him once he got in jail. And they did that raid at the Metropolitan Detention Center just to get his notes and to see what their strategy was. This thing is very egregious. They said prosecutors violated Combs' free speech right. So they said when they went to the MDC, Metropolitan Detention Center out there in Brooklyn, and they raided it, they said they were told specifically to go into Combs' area and to take pictures of all the material that is supposed to be private between him and his lawyers. And they gave it to the prosecution. And then later the judge told the prosecution, destroy the notes. Yeah, destroy the notes you already saw. Like, this is so crazy. And they said that the prosecutors used a grand jury, like an expert, to help them select a jury. And they said nowhere in history has this ever been done. And this person is still being paid by the government to this day. So this is just insane. So they're saying that they still have a jury expert, and they're thinking that this jury expert is the one that told them, we don't like number 6. We don't like number 6. And so then out of nowhere, voila, they find a way to tell the judge, we no longer want juror number 6. Okay. And they said that, again, you're bringing a whole case on, and all you presented to date was bad relationship information. Okay. So anyway, it's just crazy. His lawyers signed this. Like I said, that letter has good stuff in it. If you're interested, go to her Instagram page and read it and check it out. A lot of good stuff. Anyway, guys, chat with me in the comments, and when I get an opportunity, I will chat back. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe. Hit the notification bell so that every time I upload a video, you will be notified. If you are a subscriber, welcome back. Everybody, thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you on the next video.